So the federal government, for years now, has been pointing to the number of schools built by the U.S. in Afghanistan as a measure of success in the war. And BuzzFeed News decided to do this massive investigative report to see if those claims are indeed true. And what they discovered wasn't pretty. So first of all, when they called the State Department and the Pentagon and USAID, these different agencies, they got all different answers as to how many schools were built by the U.S. in Afghanistan. So, and even sometimes if they called the same agency at different times, like you call the State Department one day and then 6 months later you call them again, they'll just change the number completely. So at first it was 680. The State Department said, yeah, we built 680 schools. They're great. They're wonderful. Then it dropped to 605. Okay. Then it dropped to 563. Then the Pentagon said, no, it's 786. Okay, what? How do you have numbers that vary that much? I mean, it's one thing if like one or two changes because, hey, shit happens. People moved from that area, whatever. But that 786 to 563, these different numbers, they don't fucking add up. So here's the reality when reporters actually went there. They went to see what's happening. Quote, the overwhelming majority of the more than 50 U.S.-funded schools visited resemble abandoned buildings marred by collapsing roofs, shattered glass, boarded-up windows, protruding electrical wires, decaying doors, or other structural defects. At least a quarter of the schools BuzzFeed News visited do not have running water. At least a tenth of the schools BuzzFeed News visited either no longer exist or are not operating or were never built in the first place. All right, it turns out we were lied to all along about the success of these schools. The entire thing was a sham. So, in many cases, they give specific examples of specific places, too. They're like, yeah, that place, there never even was a school. So USAID and the federal government were like, oh, we built a great school in this rural province. It's wonderful. They tell us we're great people. And then they go there, they're like, huh? There's never even been a school here. And the ones they did build, many of them, terrible construction to the point where they wouldn't meet any standards. Never mind, like, you know, the standards of that the U.S. federal government has in the United States. Never mind, like, international standards, which are different and a little lower. It doesn't meet any standards. An incredible story. They say, quote, riddled with ghost schools, teachers, and students that exist only on paper, the American effort to educate Afghanistan's children was hollowed out by corruption and by short-term political and military goals that time and time again took precedence over building a viable school system, and the U.S. government has known for years that it has been peddling hype. So they knew they were lying. You know why they continue to say this about the schools? And say, oh, it's great. Because they wanted to fucking continue the war. And you need to have some kind of justification. What are you going to say? I mean, think about all the times where they could have got out and said, all right, mission accomplished, or it's time to go home. I mean, the whole idea of going into Afghanistan in the first place was just get Al-Qaeda. The Taliban is, has taken Al-Qaeda in, and they're protecting them and protecting Osama bin Laden. Let's go in there and get Al-Qaeda. Well, we had reports as of like 2006, 2005, that there were less than 100 Al-Qaeda operatives in Afghanistan. They were done. They were decimated. And Osama bin Laden, as we know, was in Pakistan. That's where he was killed. So you decimated Al-Qaeda by 2005 in Afghanistan, and you stayed there. Why the fuck did you stay there? You told us you were going in to destroy Al-Qaeda. You said that was the point. But you went in there, you did that, and then you just stayed. Why the fuck would you stay? Then you're lying to the American people. Your own words were, let's get Al-Qaeda, then we're gone. Well, you got Al-Qaeda, and you didn't leave. So what the fuck is going on here? It was never about that. That's the point. And people think, oh, that's conspiratorial, this and that. No, it's not conspiratorial. When like interests converge, you don't need a formal conspiracy. The reality is a lot of people made a lot of money in the military-industrial complex. That's a fact. You know what else is a fact? Afghanistan has minerals that we use for a lot of shit in the West, including building cell phones. You know what else is a fact? Opium production shot through the fucking roof when the U.S. invaded Afghanistan. It's not conspiracy to point out facts of reality, and that's exactly what we're dealing with here. they're not done. They say, by obtaining internal records from the Afghan Ministry of Education, never before made public, BuzzFeed News also learned that more than 1,100 schools that the ministry publicly reported as active in 2011 were in fact not operating at all. Provincial documents show that teacher salaries, largely paid for with U.S. funds, continued to pour into ghost schools. Does this sound familiar? This is exactly like the situation in Iraq when we wasted $24 billion on the puppet military, which dropped their weapons and ran the second they saw a single ISIS guy. Same thing. Just fucking dump in the money. This is your money. This is fucking taxpayer money, U.S. taxpayer money. Just dump money in and you're paying ghost schools. You know what that means? It's just don't go into corruption. It's going right into the pockets of either the military-industrial complex or corrupt people in Afghanistan. How fucking insane is that? It gets worse. Quote, some local officials even allege that those salaries sometimes end up in the hands of the Taliban. Certainly, U.S.-funded school projects have often lined the pockets of brutal warlords and reviled strongmen, which sometimes soured the local population on the U.S. and the Afghan government. At schools America funded, the education provided varies widely from math and science to, at one school the U.S. military claimed it built, little more than memorizing the Quran in a cramped mosque. Do you understand what all this means? As we're fighting the Taliban, we're accidentally funding them with our shitty sham school proposal. And so that's worst case scenario. Okay, we're funding the guys we hate and who are housing Al-Qaeda. But the best case scenario, and they give specifics on this in the article, is we actively and knowingly made deals with warlords. And oftentimes the warlords treated the populations more brutally than even the Taliban did. They have a specific case that they reference where in order to get a school built in a certain area, they had to grease the palms of a warlord. The warlord took the money, bought more weapons, started rampaging and murdering people all over the place. This is the U.S. Protecting freedom and democracy by giving money to warlords who then massacre populations. And what do we go? Whoops! As we say, we need to bring freedom and democracy, and we need to educate these people. Which, by the way, they didn't ask for, okay? But as we say that, they just said, one of the places we built, it was a school, and then it was used as a madrasa. So our U.S. tax dollars were going to pay for a school where they did nothing but memorize the Quran. There's U.S. foreign policy in a nutshell. Everything they think they're doing and everything they want to do, just take the exact opposite, and that's what's really happening. We need to stop terrorism. Well, really? You're creating more terrorism. We're against Islamic fundamentalism. Really? Then why are you paying to actually fucking teach it in certain places? Because of your incompetence and because of your corruption. No, see, this is why I've said from day one, you guys know my position, mind our fucking business. Nation building never worked when any empire ever did it. Why do we think we can overcome those odds? We're not fucking supermen. If anything, it's gotten worse when America does it because our corruption is so brazen and so in your face and there's so much of it that it's almost like, you can't even keep up the illusion that you're trying to do the right thing. Because it's not even that long after these schools were built, and the buildings are falling down, or other schools weren't built at all, or it became a fucking madrasa. All these problems, and we're not even, 7 years removed from some of these schools being built. What a fucking joke, what a joke. And how much money was wasted on this entire pet project, which is a disaster? Over $1 billion. Well done.